Will drinking cranberry juice prevent a UTI? Hi, and welcome to the 5th edition of Microbial Myths, where we put microbial-related urban legends, superstitions, and home remedies to the test. To date, we've covered over 70 microbial myths, and you can find all of these on our YouTube channel by simply searching Microbial Myths, and then be sure to click the subscribe button when you get there. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Schmidt, professor in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at the Medical University of South Carolina. And we're going to try to add at least 20 more myths to our growing catalog. Michael, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So happy to be here with you, Ashley.
It's so great to see you again. Are you ready to tackle our first myth?
We're going to try.
All right, so does cranberry juice prevent a UTI?
Maybe.
Okay.
You know, it's really hard. It's all about the bladder microbiome, and it has to do with pH. And what cranberry juice does is it lowers your urinary pH, which promotes the growth of, come on, folks, you know the answer to this, it's lactobacilli. And the lactobacilli promote good vaginal health, and that generally because the majority of the folks who get UTIs are women, and so that's why it's good to promote vaginal health. And more importantly, you don't get the nasty UTI. Men, they have to wait until they're older when their prostate gets too big to slow down their urinary flow, and then they succumb to UTIs just like women.
Nice. So would this need to be a consistent consumption of cranberry juice to keep that pH at the adequate level?
No, you can just make sure that you drink lots of water because it's all about, flushing. Yeah. And that's why your mother told you never to hold it. Didn't your mother tell you that?
She did. She did. All right. So number 2, can a person's blood type determine their susceptibility to certain infectious diseases?
Well, this is one of these loaded questions that she likes to start me off with. And we learned from the most recent pandemic with SARS-CoV-2 that people with blood type A could be more susceptible. Obviously, we have to do more tests to try to figure out why the coronaviruses with folks with blood type A are more susceptible. And folks with blood type O were more refractory to succumbing to the more severe consequences of SARS-CoV-2. But this is an old observation that folks have had, and it has to do with how these pesky microbes interact with us and our immune cells and all the other variables, because what do microbes do better than anything? Stick to things. And that's what's going on with the blood type. They're sticking to blood type antigens.
Interesting. We actually also have an article that dives into this on asm.org with Norovirus that we recently published. So for anyone who's interested, we'll link to it in the description for this show. So number 3, does apple cider vinegar have medicinal properties? So we've heard it touted as kind of the holy grail of natural remedies. Applications in weight loss, type 2 diabetes prevention, heartburn relief, lowering cholesterol, etc. Is the hype worth it? Is it
the hype we're learning from more and more studies is worth it, because what is, after all, apple cider vinegar? It's nothing more than glorified acetic acid, and that consumption of acetic acid, as it goes through our digestive system, is influencing our intestinal microbiome. And we know that they all talk to the rest of us. I mean, it's really quite an opera down in our digestive system, from our small intestine to our large intestine. And the apple cider, because it serves as a substrate for many of those microbes that are talking to our endocrine system. And this is the whole brave new field of microbial endocrinology that's emerging. So if you read gastroenterology literature with the microbe, when you're thinking about it, you'll be fascinated by apple cider vinegar.
Excellent. That makes sense. All right, this is a tricky one. Can you get Naegleria fowleri by using a neti pot?
Oh, yeah. And we're in the area where, potable water isn't sterile. Everyone here knows that. And unfortunately, Naegleria is a pesky little amoeba that likes to eat your brains. And consequently, if you happen to get the water for your neti pot from tap water, the best recommendation is to use sterile or distilled water that you can buy in the grocery store to effectively fill your neti pot, and then you can eliminate the hazard. There's also another emerging hazard associated with potable water, and that's namely non-tubercular mycobacteria. They live in our water supply as well. And so you can catch those pesky little things too.
Scary.
It is indeed. But the good news is our water system is, for the most part, really safe.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, does anyone here struggle with getting a good night's sleep? Counting sheep has never been really effective for me, but I recently read that St. John's wort is reported to cure insomnia.
Yeah, that's one of those bizarre things because St. John's wort is a nutraceutical. So it's not necessarily regulated by the FDA where they ensure lot-to-lot consistency.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you buy your St. John's wort and how the studies were done and whether or not they used pharmaceutical-grade St. John's wort. So there's too many variables to give you a yes.
Yeah.
It's a perhaps.
Makes sense. And also not totally microbial related. So
no, it was one of your curveballs.
It was one of my curveballs. Okay, so how about a little bathroom sanitation and oral hygiene talk? First up, do hand dryers spread more bacteria than paper towels?
You betcha. I mean, we got a lot of people sitting here, and remember the character that we all are from Charlie Brown is Pigpen. You're constantly shedding skin cells, and of course they're covered with microbes. And when you undergo the hair dry, you've already effectively done some exfoliation when you were washing, but then you blow those bacterial-laden skin cells all over God's green earth. And for those of you that don't wash your hands subsequent using the restroom, you'll pick them up.
So is it better to use the hand dryer or to go out with wet hands?
It's better to use paper towels if you can.
Paper towels aren't available.
It's better to use your pants.
Your pants. There we go.
Because they're you.
You heard it here.
And I'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Is the toilet seat really the dirtiest thing in your house?
No, everybody here probably knows that. It's your kitchen sponge. It loves to grow biofilms. And if you ever cultured your sponge, and where's Microbial Matters, Mark Martin? Mark's always having his students culture sponges.
All right. How about gingivitis? Does it actually cause your teeth to fall out, or can it?
Well, the bacteria don't necessarily cause the teeth to fall out. It's your immune system that does. Because gingivitis, it's got the magic word itis in it, and anyone who's taken immunology know that means inflammation. And it's the inflammatory response because they're principally gram-negative creatures that are causing the inflammation of your gum tissue. They cause the inflammatory system to come in, and you get bone reabsorption, and that's effectively what causes your teeth to fall out.
It's one of my worst nightmares.
It's everyone's worst nightmare.
Yeah. How about Listerine? Can it kill or prevent a cold sore?
So what's the active ingredient in Listerine? It's an essential oil. And essential oils are a hot topic in the disinfectant world, and it can prevent, but again, it's all about contact time and how much of the essential oil has come in contact with the microbe. So it's variable, but for the most part, it does kill germs on contact.
Yeah. Do we know anything about that time between it?
Generally, it's what they recommend on the bottle of Listerine, which no one follows.
Yeah.
I mean, we just swish and spit.
Mm-hmm. Will soaking a comb or a brush in rubbing alcohol and then applying it to your hair eliminate head lice?
Oh, every young parent who's gotten the dreaded note knows the answer to this question. This is where the term nitpicking comes from. You have to pick the nits out of your child's hair, and God help you if the child has especially curly hair. The answer to that question is no.
I'd love to talk a little about colloidal silver. So first of all, does it help treat skin infections?
No. It will actually turn you into a Smurf. How many of you want to be a Smurf? I mean, you'll literally look like Papa Smurf, the blue guy, because the ingestion of that colloidal silver will go to your skin, and it's silver, as we know, is photoreactive, and it will turn your skin that bluish hue, hence the term blue blood, because the rich folk used to use silverware, actual silver, and they would ingest enough silver in their diets to actually turn blue.
What if it's just topically applied?
The other problem with silver is it passivates. Any kid who's ever polished the family silver at Thanksgiving knows that it turns black. And when it turns black, it's no longer has any antimicrobial activity because it's passivated or lost its oomph. You need the silver ion to interact with the sulfhydryl groups to effectively inactivate the outer membrane proteins in the microbes.
Interesting. So these next couple of myths are taken straight from the headlines. As we continue to monitor the spread of avian influenza H5N1, I'm curious, can dirty bird feeders and bird baths increase the risk or spread of disease?
Well, dirty bird baths always have been culprits for increasing the spread of disease. It's fecal. Yeah. They don't worry about finding a proper porta potty. They just go wherever. And, in birds, avian influenza is a fecal oral disease. And so consequently, that will increase the risk.
What about pasteurization? Does it totally kill avian influenza in milk and dairy products?
It all depends on dose. The good news is in countries that pasteurize milk, the set standard in the U.S. is it's 100,000 standard plate count per mil at the time of sale. And that time of sale is set by the sell-by date. But in reality, dairies actually set their target for the milk they receive at 10,000, so an order of magnitude lower. And the good practice in the U.S. dairy industry is fewer than 1,000 standard plate count. And pasteurization is nothing more than quick heating to knock off the microbes. And those are the bacteria. The viruses, we don't yet know enough about the concentration of virus. And everyone who has been sickened with avian influenza on farms, associated with dairy farms, hasn't caught it from milk. They caught it from the activity in the dairy barn. So we don't actually know if it was shoveling manure or milking, setting up the milking apparatus or cleaning the teats or whatever they were doing. We don't know the exposure route for those individuals. We just know they got it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. So how long would you recommend? Obviously, milk is going to sour, but from a microbiological standpoint, beyond the sell date, how long would you recommend holding on to?
Generally, your nose is a good biosensor. Yeah. When it begins to have that off smell, because the rapid heterotrophs will look at that food, and if you don't have good asepsis when you're pouring the milk on your cereal in the morning, you're screwed.
How about prolonged use of Neosporin for wound care? Can that drive antimicrobial resistance?
Neosporin is one of those wonder ointments. Yep. It's 3 drugs in one.
Yep.
And it's basically, the drugs are typically not easily absorbable, so that's why it's in an ointment. And like everything, if you use too much of it, it's going to drive selection for resistance. And that will be problematic. But for the most part, we haven't seen the rapid emergence of skin microbes that are uber resistant to the triple cocktail of the antibiotic ointment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now on to some sort of rapid fire questions. We're making it through these kind of quickly, so we're doing well. We're doing well. We can expand. I have 2 categories for our rapid fire round this morning: natural cold remedies and pregnancy myths. So to begin with, let's start with natural cold remedies. Can fermented garlic honey treat a cold?
This is another one of those maybes, and it really has to do with how do you design a proper clinical trial. You need a sufficient mass because everyone here has a different immune system. Everyone here has had a different set of experiences, and what will work, it's really to activate those T cells and B cell memory in order to clear the infection. So sometimes those sulfur compounds in the garlic serve to stimulate our immune process, and so it depends. And the fermentation of that garlic, again, it's not an ethical pharmaceutical for which we have a standard protocol. Joe put it on his kitchen counter to ferment it, and then I did it. They're going to be different because it's sort of like sourdough bread. Everybody's sourdough starter is similar, but just a little bit different. And that's what you're going to find with these things like fermented garlic and honey is just too osmo prohibitive. It's just got no water in it, and it's effectively excluding water from the microorganisms. So that's why it affects bacteria, not so much viruses, because viruses are not alive. They're growing in us.
Right. What about cooked turnips? Is that a good cold remedy?
No. There's no data on that. I went and looked for that one. She gave me a heads up. I mean, does anyone here think cooked turnips are any good for anything other than your grandmother made you eat them?
Well, moving on. So we've talked about cold remedy. That tends to be a theme on this show. Lots of natural cold remedies. So as we've talked through these for the last 5 editions, do you have a favorite cold remedy, something that you found to be the most effective?
This is the tried and true chicken soup.
Yeah.
Chicken soup. And in reality, it's nothing more than proper nutrition. What you're doing is you're feeding your immune system. And chicken soup is a complete package. It has a little bit of starch in it. If it's got noodles, it's got vegetables in it, it's got protein, and it's got the liquid. Because the thing we forget when we're ill, especially with a cold or a sore throat, is we don't want to drink because it hurts, especially in kids. And so the chicken soup being warm soothes us, and so we consume it and we stay hydrated.
And probably some salt, good salt content also, which I would think.
It also has salt.
Yeah. Okay, so this one really comes from the old adage, feed a fever, starve a cold, but we're going to get a little more specific here. Can fasting actually reset your immune system?
There's a whole body of literature that the nutritionists are developing around fasting. And I don't know if a God-fearing immunologist has actually weighed in on those studies. What do you define as reset? Take me back to my naive state?
Right.
Or just tuning it up so it's responding to antigens better? And I don't think we know enough about antigenic selection, and we learned a lot about this developing the vaccines for SARS-CoV-2, as well as the vaccinologists have learned, and the T-cell biologists have learned an awful lot when they're looking at developing vaccines against HIV.
Yeah.
And that is the better question to ask. What have we learned from the vaccinologists and immunologists about T-cell and B-cell biology being able to reset? Because it's fundamentally an immune process that we're trying to tune up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's such a fascinating discussion. Yeah. It's a really interesting topic. Okay, so moving on to our next category of lightning round questions, does a pregnant person's diet influence the taste preferences of their unborn child? Or how about the future gut health of the baby?
The second one is easier. The answer is yes. Because, the first gift we all received if we were born vaginally from our mothers was our initial microbiome. If we were born C-section, we, of course, got our mother's skin flora. Today, what many OB departments are doing is they're taking sterile wipes, and they're doing a vaginal wipe before delivery. And then as the baby is born, they wipe it all over the baby, put it in its nose and mouth to effectively give them that first gift that they missed out on by being born C-section. So we know that happens. In terms of taste preferences, I don't remember what I had a taste for when I was in utero. So I don't know how I would design that study. And it's really, how do you design the study to definitively answer the question?
Yep.
It's a cool question.
It's an interesting question. And there's so much anecdotal. You know,
Yeah.
you hear people say, oh, I ate carrots when I was pregnant. My baby likes carrots. It's things like that. But yeah, no
Your
real way
baby
to
likes
regulate
carrots.
a study.
Your baby likes carrots because mom likes carrots.
And feeds them to the baby.
And feeds them to the baby.
Exactly. Okay. How about, is it true that pregnant people need to avoid cats?
The toxoplasmosis question.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever taken parasitology knows. And, you know, if you put your cat out at night, it goes and kills things. And it eats raw meat. Or if you happen to be someone who likes steak tartare, you can also be at risk for toxoplasmosis. And, you know, the hotel I'm staying in has steak tartare on the menu, not to order it, because I don't want toxoplasmosis. So the answer is yes. And gravid individuals should not change the litter box. That's what husbands and significant others are for.
Do they need to get rid of their cats? Is it time to get rid of the family cat?
No, they just have to get rid of their duty of changing the
There you
litter
go.
box and keeping a cleaner litter box and using the litter that clumps.
Okay. So bean sprouts are also in that do not eat list for pregnant people. Why is that? Well, is that really something to be concerned about?
So longtime listeners of TWIM will know I say it's always the sprouts. And it has to do with the water that they use to germinate the sprouts. And remember, sprout seeds are not sterile. So they literally come straight from wherever they came from, and oftentimes they're contaminated with fecal organisms. And so because there's fertilizer in these fields, and you're effectively literally eating manure.
Yeah.
And pregnant women should not eat manure.
Probably
Not an
arguably
OB.
no one should eat manure.
Not being an OB, I think it's safe to say they would give that advice.
I would agree. All right. Well, Michael, we actually made it through all 20 of our questions, so thank you for your time, and remind everyone that if you want to view our other Microbial Myths episodes, they're on our YouTube channel, and thanks for your time.